Music pounded through the VIP lounge of Manhattan's most exclusive underground club, but Landon James's cold eyes were locked on a corner booth. A heavily overweight woman, sweating and barely conscious, was being dragged away by a known predator. Landon stood, his voice lethal. "Touch her, and you're dead." Neon lights sliced through the thick, haze-filled air of Lombra, an ultra-exclusive subterranean nightclub in the meatpacking district. Camilla Smith sat rigidly on the edge of a curved leather banquette, her hands tightly gripping a sweating glass of sparkling water. At 28, Camilla was a senior auditor at Deloitte, a woman whose brilliant mind was entirely overshadowed by the physical reality of her body. She weighed 260 pounds. In the unforgiving, hyper-curated world of Manhattan nightlife, she wasn't just fat. She was practically invisible. She wore a black, sequined wrap dress from Torrid that felt entirely too tight, her thick thighs chafing uncomfortably beneath the fabric. She had only come to the club because it was her college roommate, Sarah's bachelorette party, and Sarah had begged her to be the designated responsible one. But true to form, Sarah had vanished 30 minutes ago with a tall, chiseled man who looked like an Abercrombie model, leaving Camilla stranded in a sea of size zero socialites and men in bespoke suits who looked right through her as if she were made of glass. Camilla sighed, glancing at the cracked screen of her iPhone. It was 1:14 a.m. She decided to give Sarah 10 more minutes before she called an Uber to take her back to her quiet apartment in Queens. She just wanted to take off her pinching heels, wash off her heavy makeup, and disappear into the safe, non-judgmental comfort of her own bed. It's a crime for a beautiful woman to be drinking water in a place like this. Camilla jumped, almost spilling her drink. A man had slid into the booth beside her. He was conventionally attractive, late 30s, wearing a sharply tailored navy blazer and a gold Patek Philippe watch that gleamed under the strobe lights. His hair was slicked back, his smile perfectly white, but his eyes carried a strange, hollow intensity. "Oh, I'm just waiting for a friend," Camilla stammered, instinctively crossing her arms over her stomach, a defensive posture she had perfected over a lifetime of feeling too large, too much, taking up too much space. "Reed Brooks," he said, extending a manicured hand. "And you are?" "Camilla," she replied hesitantly, not taking his hand. Men like Reed Brooks did not talk to women like Camilla Smith. She knew the brutal math of the dating world. To men in places like this, fat women were either invisible, the punchline of a cruel joke, or a bizarre fetish. Her defense mechanisms flared into high alert. "Camilla," he purred, leaning closer. The smell of his Tom Ford cologne was overpowering, metallic and sharp. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else in the world right now. Let me buy you a real drink. What's your poison? A gin and tonic? A martini?" "No, thank you. I'm fine." "Don't be rude, Camilla," Reed said, his tone shifting imperceptibly from charming to demanding. He signaled a passing waitress without breaking eye contact with her. "2 Grey Goose martinis." Camilla felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. She wanted to leave, but the cramped space of the booth and Reed's sprawling posture effectively trapped her against the wall. When the drinks arrived, Reed paid with a black American Express card. He slid the frosted martini glass toward her. "To new friends," he said, raising his own glass. Camilla looked at the drink. She was parched, the club was sweltering, and a small, pathetic part of her, the part that had been ignored by men for a decade, was flattered by the aggressive attention. Maybe he's just being nice, she thought, hating herself for her own naivety. She picked up the glass and took a tentative sip. It was strong, burning the back of her throat. She didn't see Reed's thumb brush the rim of the glass when he handed it to her. She didn't see the tiny, fast-dissolving white powder, a heavy dose of Rohypnol, melt into the clear liquid. "There you go," Reed smiled, a predatory gleam flashing in his eyes. Reed targeted women like Camila for a very specific reason. Predators looked for vulnerability. They looked for women who were used to being ignored, women with low self-esteem, who wouldn't make a scene, who would be too embarrassed to scream for help. He knew that the bouncers and the beautiful people wouldn't pay a second glance to a heavy-set woman stumbling out the back door with a wealthy regular. She was the perfect prey. 5 minutes later, the first wave hit Camilla. It started as a dull hum at the base of her skull. The pulsing bass of the techno music seemed to detach from the speakers and vibrate directly inside her teeth. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the neon lights smeared into long, blinding streaks of pink and blue. I don't feel well," Camilla mumbled, her tongue suddenly thick and uncooperative. Her heart began to race in panicked, erratic thumps. "You just stood up too fast, sweetheart." Reed's voice sounded distorted, as if he were speaking to her from underwater. "No, I didn't. I'm sitting down," she tried to say, but it came out as a breathless slur. She tried to lift her hands to push him away, but her arms felt like they were encased in concrete. A terrifying, heavy paralysis was rapidly crawling up her limbs. Reed's arm wrapped around her thick waist, his fingers digging painfully into the soft flesh of her side. "You've had too much to drink. Let's get you some fresh air. My car is right out back." "No," Camilla whimpered, panic surging through her fading consciousness. "Help!" But the music was too loud. No one was looking at the fat girl in the corner. Reed hauled her upward. Camilla's legs gave out immediately, her heavy frame dead weight. Reed cursed under his breath, straining to hold her up, pinning her arm over his shoulder as he began to forcefully drag her toward the dimly lit VIP's exit hallway. Camilla's vision tunneled. She felt the cold, hard floor scraping against her open-toed shoes. She was completely at his mercy, her brilliant mind trapped inside a body that was shutting down. Tears of absolute terror spilled down her cheeks. This is it, she thought, the darkness pulling her under. Nobody is going to stop him. But Camilla didn't know that from the elevated balcony above, a pair of dark, merciless eyes had been watching the entire scene unfold. Landon James did not believe in coincidences. At 34, as the head of the most feared Italian crime syndicate on the eastern seaboard, his survival depended on reading a room with terrifying accuracy. Sitting in the shadowed mezzanine of L'Ombra, surrounded by 3 of his heavily armed capos, Landon was supposed to be finalizing a multi-million-dollar shipping port union contract. Instead, his attention was completely hijacked by the sickening display playing out on the floor below. Landon took a slow drag from his Cohiba cigar, his sharp jawline clenched in tightly suppressed rage. He was dressed flawlessly in a charcoal Brioni suit, his imposing 6'4" frame radiating a quiet, lethal energy that made the dangerous men around him sweat. "Don Landon, the Russian associates are asking about the customs delay," Matteo, his fiercely loyal right-hand man, murmured. Landon ignored him. His dark, piercing eyes tracked Reed Brooks. Landon knew Brooks. The man was a rat-faced hedge fund manager who occasionally laundered money for a rival Albanian faction. Brooks was a coward, a man who liked to hurt those weaker than him. Landon watched as Brooks slipped something into the drink of the plus-sized woman in the torrid dress. Landon had noticed her earlier. She had looked entirely out of place, uncomfortable and defensive, wrapped in a quiet dignity that the plastic, superficial people in the club lacked. When Brooks roughly hauled the woman to her feet, her heavy body going completely limp, her head rolling back as she clearly lost consciousness, a primal, violent instinct erupted inside Landon's chest. The Italian Mafia Boss lived by a strict, old-world code of honor. There were monsters in his world, yes, and he was one of them. But preying on a helpless, drugged woman was a line that, if crossed in his presence, required immediate, fatal correction. "Matteo," Landon's voice was a low, terrifying rumble. "Hold the meeting." Matteo blinked, following Landon's gaze down to the hallway. "Boss, we shouldn't make a scene. The feds are—" Landon was already moving. He descended the steel staircase with the terrifying speed and silence of an apex predator. The crowd seemed to part for him instinctively, sensing the pure violence rolling off his broad shoulders in waves. Down in the VIP hallway, Reed Brooks was sweating profusely, cursing as he dragged Camilla's 260-pound, unresponsive body toward the steel fire exit door. Camilla's eyes were rolled back, a line of drool slipping from her lips, her body completely paralyzed by the massive dose of Rohypnol. Reed fumbled for his car keys, distracted by the dead weight of his victim. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him. A massive, calloused hand clamped onto Reed's shoulder with the crushing force of an industrial vice. Reed gasped, dropping his keys, and spun around. He found himself staring up into the dead, unblinking eyes of Landon James. "Let go of her," Landon commanded softly. His voice barely rose above a whisper, yet it cut through the base of the club like a razor blade. Reed's face drained of color. He recognized the Don immediately. Everyone in the Manhattan underworld knew Landon James. "Mr. James? She's my girlfriend. She just had too much to drink. I'm taking her home." Landon's gaze flicked to Camilla's pale, sweat-slicked face, noting the dilated pupils and the terrifying shallowness of her breathing. Brooks had given her too much. She wasn't just sedated. She was slipping into respiratory distress. "You lie to me again," Landon said smoothly, "and I will tear your tongue out of your skull and choke you with it." Reed trembled, his grip on Camilla slipping. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Touch her, and you're dead," Landon stated, stepping fully into Reed's personal space. Reed panicked and made a grave error. He reached inside his blazer, going for the snub-nosed revolver he carried illegally. Landon moved faster than a human that size had any right to. His left hand shot out, wrapping entirely around Reed's throat, lifting the man 3 inches off the floor. Reed choked, his eyes bulging as Landon's grip crushed his windpipe. With his right hand, Landon reached down and effortlessly scooped Camilla's heavy, limp body into his arms before she could hit the floor. He held her massive weight, 260 pounds of dead, uncooperative mass, against his broad chest as easily as if she were a child. Matteo materialized from the shadows, flanking his boss. "Take him to the warehouse in Brooklyn," Landon ordered Matteo, not breaking eye contact with the gagging, terrified Brooks. "I want him alive when I get there. He has a lot to answer for." Matteo nodded, drawing a suppressed Glock and pressing it directly into Brooks's ribs, taking the trembling man out of Landon's grip. Landon looked down at the woman in his arms. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breathing dangerously slow. Her skin was ice cold. "Get the SUV to the back door, now!" Landon barked into his earpiece, his calm facade shattering into sudden urgency. "And call Dr. Harris. Tell him to meet me at the Baccarat penthouse. We have a severe overdose." Carrying her effortlessly, Landon bypassed the club's security entirely, stepping out into the frigid New York night air. A black, armored Cadillac Escalade screeched to a halt in the alleyway. Landon climbed into the spacious back seat, refusing to put Camila down, holding her securely against him as the SUV tore away from the curb. He looked at her face, brushing a stray lock of damp hair away from her forehead. In his violent, ruthless life, women were usually transactions, beautiful commodities seeking money and power. He had never seen this woman before in his life. He didn't know her name. But as he felt her faint, struggling heartbeat against his own chest, a fierce, inexplicable possessiveness locked into place inside his soul. He was Landon James, a man who destroyed lives for a living. But tonight, he was going to save hers. Hours later, Camilla Smith felt consciousness slowly bleeding back into her brain. The crushing, dizzying darkness began to lift, replaced by a soft, warm glow. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy as lead. She was no longer in the loud, terrifying club. She was lying on a massive California king bed. The sheets against her bare legs felt like spun silk. She tried to move her arm, wincing at a sharp prick on the back of her hand. She turned her head weakly and saw an IV drip feeding clear fluid into her vein. Panic instantly flared. Where am I? What happened? The last thing she remembered was the spinning room, the horrible man, the absolute certainty that she was going to be assaulted and killed. She gasped, trying to sit up, her thick chest heaving in terror. "Do not move. You are perfectly safe." The voice was deep, rich, and heavily accented with Italian, coming from the corner of the room. Camila froze. The room was breathtakingly opulent, boasting floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering skyline of Central Park. And sitting in a leather wingback chair, bathed in the amber light of a crystal lamp, was the most terrifyingly handsome man she had ever seen. He wore a dark dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms thick with muscle and dark ink. His eyes, completely unreadable, were locked onto hers. Who are you?" Camilla croaked, her throat burning. She instinctively pulled the thick silk comforter up to her chin, hyper-aware of her large body, feeling incredibly exposed. "Where am I?" Landon stood up slowly, crossing the vast room with measured, predatory grace until he stood at the edge of the bed. He looked down at her, not with the disgust or invisibility she was so used to from men, but with a burning, intense focus that made her breath hitch. "My name is Landon," he said softly, his voice carrying the dangerous weight of absolute authority. "And as long as you are in my bed, nobody in this city will ever hurt you again." Silence stretched across the massive, high-ceilinged bedroom of the Baccarat Hotel penthouse, broken only by the soft, rhythmic hum of the IV machine. Camila clutched the silk sheets against her chest, her mind struggling to process the impossible situation. She was a 260-pound accountant from Queens who spent her weekends watching Netflix and organizing spreadsheets. She did not wake up in billionaire penthouses with dangerously gorgeous Italian men guarding her door. Landon stepped closer, the ambient light catching the sharp, patrician angles of his face. He possessed an aura of absolute command, a man entirely accustomed to the world bending to his will. Yet as he looked down at her, the terrifying coldness in his eyes melted into something that looked dangerously like reverence. "You suffered a severe chemical assault," Landon explained, his voice a low, soothing baritone that sent a strange shiver down her spine. "The man at the club, Reed Brooks, laced your drink with enough rohypnol to sedate a horse. My personal physician, Dr. Aris, has been monitoring you for the past 14 hours to ensure your heart didn't fail." Camilla felt a fresh wave of nausea, the horrific memories of the heavy paralysis and Brooks's cruel grip crashing over her. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back tears of humiliation. He just came up to me. I was just sitting there. I thought he was just being nice. God, I'm so stupid. I'm just the fat, ugly friend they leave behind, and he knew I'd be an easy target. "Stop," Landon commanded. The word wasn't loud, but it struck like a whip, freezing the self-deprecation in her throat. He sat on the edge of the mattress. The bed dipped under his substantial weight, bringing his towering frame intimately close. He reached out, his large, warm hand gently gripping her chin, forcing her to look into his dark, storm-filled eyes. "You are neither stupid nor ugly," Landon said, his tone vibrating with fierce intensity. "You are breathtaking. And Brooks did not target you simply because you were sitting alone, Camilla. He targeted you because he recognized you." Camilla blinked, entirely bewildered. "Recognized me? From where? I've never seen that man in my life." Landon released her chin, reaching over to the sleek marble nightstand. He picked up a leather-bound tablet and handed it to her. "Tell me, Camilla, as a senior auditor at Deloitte, what is the name of the primary corporate account you have been investigating for the past 3 weeks?" Camilla's jaw dropped. How did he know about her job? She looked at the screen, which displayed a highly confidential financial dossier. "Apex Logistics," she whispered, her analytical brain immediately engaging, despite the lingering fog of the drugs. "It's a mid-sized freight company. I found massive irregularities in their Q3 statements. Millions of dollars being routed through fictitious shell vendors in the Cayman Islands." "Exactly," Landon nodded, a dangerous, predatory smile curving his lips. "Apex Logistics is a front. It is a highly sophisticated money laundering operation for an Albanian crime syndicate operating out of the Bronx. Reed Brooks is their hedge fund manager. He is the architect behind those shell companies." Camilla felt the blood drain from her face. The room suddenly felt incredibly small. "He was at Lombra last night, meeting with associates," Landon continued smoothly. "He saw you. He recognized you from the corporate headshots Deloitte sends to their clients before an audit. He knew you were the woman who was a week away from uncovering a $50 million laundering scheme and handing it over to the SEC. He wasn't just trying to assault me," Camilla breathed, horror dawning on her. "He was trying to kill me. He was going to make me disappear so the audit would fail." "He was going to try," Landon corrected, his voice dropping an octave, filled with dark, lethal promise. "But he made a fatal error. He stepped into my territory, and he laid his hands on something that I have decided is mine." Camilla's breath hitched. She looked at Landon, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "And why do you care about some random auditor?" Landon stood up, casually unbuttoning the cuffs of his dark shirt. "My name is Landon James. I am the head of the James Syndicate. The Albanians who employ Brooks are my enemies. But more importantly, Camilla." He leaned over her, his hands bracing the mattress on either side of her hips. "I saw a woman in that club who carried herself with quiet resilience. A woman with a brilliant mind, wrapped in a body that commands the room, even if the fools in this city are too blind to see it. I deal with plastic, artificial people every day. You are real, And from the moment I pulled you from that animal's grip, your life became my responsibility." Camilla was paralyzed, not by the drug this time, but by the overwhelming, intoxicating gravity of Landon James. The most dangerous man in New York had just declared war for her. 3 days passed inside the gilded cage of the Baccarat penthouse. Camilla's physical recovery was swift, the remnants of the Rohypnol flushing from her system, but her emotional state was a chaotic tempest. She had tried to leave on the 2nd day, arguing that she had an apartment in Queens and a job to return to. Matteo, Landon's stoic, heavily armed second-in-command, had respectfully but firmly blocked the elevator doors, informing her that the Albanian syndicate was hunting for her, and leaving the building would mean a swift and brutal death. To Camilla's absolute shock, Landon had entirely anticipated her insecurities about her size in this alien, opulent environment. When she requested her old, tight, torrid dress back, just so she could feel somewhat normal, Landon had refused. Instead, a parade of private tailors from Bergdorf Goodman had arrived, instructed by Landon to bring only their finest plus-size collections. Now, Camilla walked the hardwood floors of the penthouse, wearing a custom, deep emerald silk robe that draped perfectly over her heavy curves, making her feel like royalty rather than an outcast. On the evening of the 3rd day, the penthouse doors slid open. Landon walked in. The air in the room instantly shifted, growing heavy with a dark, metallic tension. Landon's charcoal suit was immaculate, but he looked exhausted. There was a single faint smear of dark crimson blood on the crisp white cuff of his shirt. Camilla stood up from the velvet sofa, her heart leaping into her throat. "Landon?" He stopped, his dark eyes locking onto her. He took a deep, shuddering breath, as if simply looking at her was the only thing anchoring him to his humanity. He walked over to the built-in crystal bar, poured 2 fingers of Macallan Scotch, and downed it in one smooth motion. "It is done," Landon said quietly, his back to her. Camilla's hands trembled. "What is done? What happened to Brooks?" Landon turned slowly. The ruthlessness of his underworld life was completely unmasked in his eyes. Reed Brooks is no longer a problem. The Albanian syndicate's upper management has been restructured. They will not retaliate. Apex Logistics will miraculously file for bankruptcy by Monday, and your Deloitte audit will be closed without incident. You are entirely safe. Camilla knew what he meant. She was looking at a killer, a mafia don who had just executed his rivals to protect her. All her life, she had been taught to shrink herself, to apologize for taking up space, to accept the crumbs of basic human decency. And here stood a man who had ripped the city's underworld apart simply because someone had tried to hurt her. "You killed him," she whispered, her voice wavering. Landon closed the distance between them with slow, deliberate steps. He stopped inches from her. "I told him that if he touched you, he was dead. I do not break my promises, Mia Regina." "I don't belong in this world, Landon," Camilla said, tears finally spilling over her thick lashes. "I'm an accountant. I'm fat. I'm ordinary. You are a king in this city. You could have any supermodel in Manhattan. Why are you doing this?" Landon's expression hardened with fierce, territorial passion. He reached out, his large hands wrapping around her thick waist, pulling her heavy, soft body flush against his hard, muscular frame. Camilla gasped at the contact, the sheer heat of him burning through her silk robe. "Do not insult yourself in my presence," Landon growled softly, his lips brushing against her temple. Supermodels are empty vessels. I do not want bone and silicone. I want you. I want your brilliant mind that uncovers millions in stolen funds. I want these curves that drive me absolutely insane. I want the woman who survived that club with her dignity intact. He tilted her head back, his thumb wiping a tear from her cheek. You have spent your whole life hiding, Camilla, believing the lies society fed you about your worth. But you are not invisible to me. You are the center of my entirely dark world, and I will burn the rest of it down before I ever let you go. Camilla looked up into his fierce, unyielding eyes and saw only absolute, terrifying truth. For the first time in her 28 years, she didn't want to hide. She didn't want to apologize for her body. She reached up, her soft hands tangling in the thick hair at the nape of his neck, and pulled him down. When Landon's lips crashed against hers, it was an explosion of raw, consuming heat. It was a vow, sealed in the shadows of the mafia, a promise of eternal protection. Camilla kissed him back with a desperate, beautiful hunger, knowing that her quiet, invisible life was dead. In its place, she had been reborn as the protected, fiercely loved queen of the New York underworld. If you were captivated by Camilla and Landon's dark, thrilling romance and the breathtaking twists of their collision, don't keep it to yourself. Smash that like button. Share this incredible story with your friends who love mafia romance. And make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heart-pounding, dramatic tales of underworld love and ultimate revenge. Drop a comment below letting us know your favorite moment from the story.